Granny's Quilt. I have the best granny in the world. I love going to stay with her and her two cats, Freddie and Mr. Big, and I always ask Granny to tell me the story of her wonderful patchwork quilt. And Granny always says, "Do you really want to hear that old nonsense again? I must have told you about the quilt 1,000 times. You know it's like the story of my life. The little pieces are from all my different dresses ever since I was a little girl just like you." I had 10 brothers and sisters. My mum, who was a dressmaker, made all of our clothes. Mine were usually hand-me-downs, but I had a new dress of my very own for my baby sister Emily's christening. It was made from this lovely blue spotty material. Make, do and mend was my mother's motto. These faded pieces with the pink flowers came from my eldest sister Agnes Ann's best dress. Then my mum cut it up and turned it into bloomers for Violet and an everyday frock for Rose. Next time round, she unpicked all the seams and made summer smocks for Babs and Maggie. Finally, Mum made Rose a swimsuit and a sundress for me with a matching hat out of the last bits of the material. These squares are from my school pinafore. I hated the dark blue cloth. I was always being told off in school for daydreaming. One day a girl called Margaret Muddle brought in her pet mouse. Everyone was allowed to see it except for me. I'd been sent to stand in the corner. This lavender satin was my first dance frock. Oh, how I loved it. Mum was making an evening gown for a lady and there was just enough material left over for a dress for me. It was all the rage then to have a boyish figure. I had to flatten my bust by tying a long scarf round and round. I always crossed my fingers that it wouldn't come undone in the middle of a Charleston. When I was a bit older, I went out to work as a children's nanny. It was harder in those days. There weren't many jobs for girls to choose from. I wore a grey dress and a white head square which I thought made me look like a nun. One day in the park, a handsome man came and sat next to me. He asked me out to tea, and then 5 years later he asked me to marry him. The handsome man was your grandpa. The white silk is from my wedding dress. It had pearl buttons all the way down the back. I saved my wages for months to buy the material. I remember that it was such a windy day, my veil kept blowing over my eyes. This piece of material with little boats sailing all over it's from a dress with a dancing sailor on the pocket. I wore it when your mum was a baby and Grandpa and I used to go down to the beach for our tea. I had that dress until it almost fell apart. The squares of blue and green leaves bring back such memories. They're cut from a wartime dress. I wore it the day your mum and I were evacuated to the country. We had to save up our clothing coupon for ages to buy anything new, so that dress had to last the whole war. I remember how we all had to take our gas masks with us. Your mum hated hers. I made this yellow material covered in little black bees into a pinafore. I wore it every day for housework and I thought it seemed just right, busy bees just like me. Sometimes your mum helped me when she came home from school, but sometimes she didn't. "Let's put the quilt back on the bed now," said Granny. "That's the end of the patchwork quilt story. The busy bee pinafore dress was the last one I saved. We'll have to look at my photo album to see what happened next. There's your mum's wedding photo. I wore my best hat with the yellow silk ribbon that day, and this one was taken at your christening. And here's one that was taken only 2 years ago. I made you that little dress, do you remember? I even have some of the material left. Perhaps you could start a patchwork quilt of your own." And today, Granny showed me how to make a patchwork quilt of my own. Now when I grow up, my quilt will tell a story just like hers.